Welcome to Here Comes the Boom, a KSR and KSR Plus recruiting podcast talking all things Kentucky basketball recruiting. It's still transfer portal season. Kentucky's got a lot of their roster wrapped up. We're going to be joined by On3 national basketball analyst Joe Tipton to talk about Kentucky's efforts in the portal and some of the names that are still out there, both in the portal and in the high school ranks. Joe, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely, Jacob. Happy to be here.
Well, I know you've been working real hard covering the transfer portal. You've seen it all when it comes to Kentucky this offseason. So I want to start by asking about what have been your overall thoughts on Kentucky's efforts in the transfer portal so far?
I really like what they've been able to do. I think probably my favorite pickup thus far, at least, is Jaden Quaintance, former Kentucky commit under Calipari, obviously reopens when Cal goes to Arkansas. And then for his freshman year, plays at Arizona State, then hits the portal, and then commits to Kentucky there soon after. I really like him. I really like his upside defensive ability. He's a projected, top 5, top 10 pick next year. So Kentucky fans will likely only have him for a year, but I do think his impact will be immense. I think Jalen Lowe is a really good pickup just to give you some scoring. I wish his overall shooting percentages were a bit higher, a little bit of a lower, shooting. I think he shot like 26% from three, so don't necessarily love that. But hopefully, playing on a just a better overall team at Kentucky next year, that'll be able to help him. But hopefully get Otega Oweh back. Obviously, I know he declared for the NBA draft, but at least what I've been told is the expectation is he'll be back in Lexington next year. Mo Diabate from Alabama, big fan of his, especially on the defensive side. I think he's very versatile, can guard the, threes, fours, even some, quicker guards as well. I think that might be an area that Kentucky looked to improve this offseason just because there was some games where there was just tremendous lack of effort on the defensive side of the ball. Even Cam Williams, the transfer guard from Tulane, freshman, I think he shot over 40% from three, just kind of a nice depth piece to bring off the bench. Obviously, it was massive getting Brandon Garrison back after the speculation that he might enter the transfer portal. And then, of course, the freshman. No, I really like what they've done. Obviously, I know Kentucky fans, there's been some public misses right in the portal. They went after some of these big fish like Yaxel from UAB, Donovan Den, a couple others. But that's part of recruiting. You can't land everyone that you go after. And I'm really impressed with what they've been able to do.
Well, Kentucky has the number 3 transfer class in the country, according to On3, but they're not done yet. We've still got some names left on the board for Kentucky. I want to ask you about a few of them, starting with a guy that just got back onto the board, Trayson Eaglestaff, North Dakota transfer, who committed to South Carolina before decommitting earlier this week. Joe, what are you hearing with his recruitment?
Yeah, what's interesting is before, I was a little surprised to see him pick South Carolina. I knew they were involved. I knew he was on a visit there, but he was actually planning, at least according to my sources, going to visit Kentucky right after or soon after his visit to South Carolina, but decided to make it official with the Gamecocks, obviously, on that trip. Now he's reopened. Kentucky's re-engaged him. There is some mutual interest there, it appears. However, I'm told that he's going to hear out other schools as well. West Virginia is another school that's picked up some recent buzz here also. But I think, Trayson Eaglestaff is definitely a name for Kentucky fans to monitor. The Wildcats are looking for one final piece here, just a high-powered, 2-3 guard, somebody that's a difference maker. And, hopefully Eaglestaff can be that for UK, but definitely wouldn't, pencil him in. I think this might take a little bit of time, and it's definitely going to be a heated recruiting battle.
Well, if you're subscribed to KSR Plus, you will have seen on the KS board this morning that Kentucky is very, very involved with Eaglestaff since his decommitment. Somebody else Kentucky has gotten involved with is St. John's transfer Jaden Glover. Joe, what can you tell me about his recruitment?
Yeah, if I had to say, Glover was an impressive prospect coming out of high school. Didn't get a lot of playing time at St. John's, who was a very experienced team. They're not playing a lot of freshmen. And Patino himself's even been vocal about that himself, that they're not really going after many high school guys anymore, just portal guys. But if I had to say, Glover is more of a depth piece as well. Probably a guy that you bring off the bench. Yes, there might be some mutual interest there, but I would expect him being a little bit lower on the board. But I really liked him coming out of high school, known for being a shooter. So could be another name for Kentucky fans to just keep an eye on.
The last transfer I want to ask about is Jamir Watkins from Florida State. There were some reports yesterday that Kentucky was involved before that got deleted off social media. So what can you tell me about what's going on there?
Yeah, that's always a interesting sign when a tweet gets deleted. You don't know how accurate it was, or you know what I mean. Someone told somebody to take it down, right? I think there might be some very early interest from Kentucky, but a lot of these schools with quite a few of these guys, like with Jamir Watkins himself, like I'm told, like his priority is going pro. He doesn't necessarily want to come back to college. I think he's been in school like 5 years now. He does have an extra year of eligibility, I'm told, because of a redshirt year. I believe it was VCU where he began his career. But he's a really talented player. I could see Kentucky getting in the mix there. I think a couple other schools were mentioned yesterday. Louisville, I don't expect them being involved. Illinois, not really, maybe, depending on how some of the rest of their roster shakes out. I don't anticipate Duke being involved with him. But he's a really talented player. I think he averaged like almost 18 a game for Florida State this year. I think he was, I think his shooting percentages, like I always think about Kentucky and the three-pointing, like you want a guy like Kobe Bryant and guys that shoot very high percentage from three just because of how Pope runs the offense, getting up so many threes. And Watkins was a little bit lower on the three-point line, same with Jalen Lowe. So like I think you do want to, if you can, add a little bit better shooting, but he is definitely somebody for people to keep an eye on and monitor to see if they get him on campus. But I do think it's still pretty early with Watkins and Kentucky. I think it's very preliminary.
So we've been glued to the transfer portal, but that hasn't stopped Kentucky from looking at the high school ranks and some international prospects. So there are two other names I want to ask you about, starting with Braden Hawthorne, who decommitted from West Virginia. Hawthorne was on campus at Kentucky on Wednesday for an official visit. What are you hearing there? What do you think about his recruitment?
Yeah, so he's obviously, you mentioned he was originally committed to West Virginia. He's from there. Obviously, they had a coaching change there, and I believe he's still considering the Mountaineers. But he's a late bloomer, a guy that was virtually unknown probably this time last year, now ranked within the top 50 at On3's rankings. I do think this is a guy that if Kentucky made a hard push for, that they would have a really good chance with. However, I do know that they've taken quite a few high school guys. I don't know if Pope, I'm not in on those meetings. I don't know if Pope's just really wanting to take a portal guy to kind of help fill out the roster with some experience. But he would be a nice developmental piece and maybe even be able to give you some pretty good minutes as a freshman. A lot of people are a big fan of him, 6'8" wings. So with a lot of upside there. So obviously they did bring him on campus, which makes it known that he is a priority for them. But with this day and age, with the transfer portal, especially it being in April when we're in the thick of it now, a lot of those high school recruits just aren't at the top of the board.
Then we've got the international ranks where Kentucky's already brought in one commit. They're going after another guy, a Bosnian guard. They already have a Croatian. Bosnian guard, Harun Zerno. If I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. But, Joe, what are you hearing in Harun's recruitment?
Also very early interest with Kentucky. That's the thing. Like, Kentucky is in a spot where they can be pretty selective with who they go after because they are UK. But there have been some early talks with Harun. There is interest there. I'm told they haven't made him an offer yet, a scholarship offer yet, but he is planning to visit like schools like Miami, Villanova. So we'll kind of see where things go with Harun in Kentucky, but still early with him as well.
Some additional context on Harun's recruitment. Mark Fox is actually the one leading the charge for Kentucky. And Joe, you mentioned a few schools he's visiting. Kentucky may receive a visit next week, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. Joe, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for joining me. Where can fans find your work?
Yeah, you can check out my articles at on3.com or on Twitter and Instagram at Tipton Edits.
Awesome, Joe. Well, we'll hope to see you again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
My final thought, we got to talk about FanStake, our sponsor, our good friends. Let's take a look. Last week I said we were going to take a look and see where Kentucky stood with each of their top targets over on FanStake. We're taking a look right now. Let's go and share this right here. Looking at Nate Ament, Kentucky trails Louisville. Kentucky's at 49,000. Louisville's at 87,000. Then we've got Jamir Watkins. No stakes yet. Go in there, stake Kentucky. Jaden Glover, same thing. No stakes. But then we've got Trayson Eaglestaff, who has $150 stake from You Call the Way. Kentucky 50, everyone else 0. So go ahead, go to FanStake, stake your favorite Kentucky target. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to go and subscribe to KSR Plus. Go and subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel, and we'll see you again soon.